Hey y'all, welcome back to Down on the Homestead, and this is part 3 of our canning emergency. Like I said in the first video of this little 3-part series, is one of our freezers went out and we had to quickly can our chicken and our venison. We did the venison first, did the freeze drying second, and now we are canning raw chicken on the bone. Yes, it's raw on the bone with the skin on. Well, except for the chicken breast. We took the skin off, cut that up into cubes, and that will be canned separately for recipes, whatever, just with the chicken breast. So just wanted to show you how you can raw chicken. Don't be scared to can meat. It's super easy. As long as you go by the guidelines, you are good. This past year, we raised our own meat chickens as well as processing them ourselves. And I bet my husband has done this a million times in his life. Between processing our own pork, venison, rabbits, and chickens, I think he's become pretty efficient. I'm sure he knows how much he's appreciated. He made sure to cut the tenderloins away from the breast so we could cook those later for dinner. Now, removing the skin from the breast meat allowed us to cut down on the fat in the jars that we were canning just the breast meat only. He cut up into the chunks, which has allowed us to use in different dishes and recipes. Now that we have our chicken cut up, we actually parted out the wings, the legs, things like that. The chicken breast on our meat chickens, which were the Cornish cross, the breasts were massive. We might be able to get part of a breast in a quart jar. So we decided to cut up the breast. So we're going to do all the breast in one jar. The rest we're going to put in their own jars, bone in with the skin, and they all are raw. So I'm going to start with the chicken breast chunks. So we just put those in. You actually do not have to put any seasonings in this chicken, which we do not. Mainly because we're not sure what we're going to use these for. And I really don't want things in there and I can't use that for a certain dish because that's not what I wanted. So we just raw pack these. I do not put any water in this because this will actually create its own stock. So don't have to add any meat. The only thing I add is salt. Now I have quite a bit of the breast meat, so I'm just going to do one jar just to show you how I do that. Just make sure I pack that down at least an inch headspace. So that is finished. So now I'm going to move on to the parts. Like I said, our meat chickens were huge. I think the last time that I did a batch of our chicken, we could only get 2 legs in a quart jar. That's how big they were. So I'm going to show you, these aren't quite as big as some of the ones, but you just take a chicken leg. I put that one with the big end down, that one with the big end down, and now I will tell you that I have found that because obviously this top half of this chicken leg does not really have any meat, it doesn't create as much stock when you do just chicken legs. So I kind of wanted to have, like a jar of just legs, but it just doesn't create enough of its own juices. So I will take some parts of some legs and I will push that down in there so I make sure that all of the empty spots have something in there. So that's what I'll do. I'll take parts and just shove it down in there. That way it'll make sure that you have plenty of stock in there. Just shove it in there. Still a few little empty spots, but for the most part, it's pretty good. So it'll have plenty of stock. So I'm going to do a couple of more jars. This is the thighs. They're huge. So I will put a few thighs in there. And I mean, that's got like 1, 2, 3. You can't really get a whole lot more than that. You just have to work it around to where you can kind of shove it down in there and there's not a whole lot of space, a lot of empty space, although it will fill up with the broth. So I'm going to try to get that in there. I think that's probably okay. There is a spot at the bottom, but it's kind of hard to get every little nook and cranny covered. So I'm going to take a few, just a big old leg. I'm going to try to take a few more legs in there. Like I said, I put pieces of the wings just so I have a little bit more meat in that jar that will create more juices. So you just have to go through, get those in there. I tried to do all legs, but like I said, the level of liquid in the past jars isn't as high as I would like because there's just not as much meat just with that. So anyway, that's what you do. You just get that as much as you can squeezed in there. And so let me wash my hands and I'll add some salt. Alrighty, so in quart jars with my raw chicken, like I said, I do not add other spices. So all I do is add salt. Now this is pickling and canning salt. You can use like pink Himalayan salt, sea salt, but you do not use regular table salt. And that's it. Now after I put the salt, I will take a napkin, soak it in some white vinegar. I wipe the rims off really good so there's no fat, there's no pieces of salt, to make sure that you get a good seal with your lids. Like that, just wipe it off right around the top. Alrighty, got that finished. Now I take my lids, which I do put in hot water. Ball says you do not have to heat them up. I like to heat them up. So I don't boil them, I just heat them up some in a pot with some water. And just put the lids on. I'm telling you that canning meat is one of the easiest things that you will do. I think the longest it takes is for the prep, but this is super simple. Take your rings, put those on, fingertip tight. You don't have to just crank it down, just fingertip tight. Once I finish with all of my chicken, I'm going to have 2 canners going, so I can put 7 wide mouth jars in each canner. I don't want to put chicken in my jars and them sit on the counter, so I'm only going to fill as many jars as I can put in my canners. The rest will go back on ice when I get finished with everything. Then I'll, do some more jars and keep canning. Alrighty, we ended up with 14 quart jars of the raw chicken. I still actually have some chicken breast chunks left, but I'll just have to can those separate because I can only get 14 wide mouth jars in my canners. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And also wanted to let you know that when you get your canner, make sure you look at the manual. My canners require 3 quarts of water in each canner. So I've already done that. I added some white vinegar just to keep my jars clean. So I'm going to load those into the canner. And like I said, we can get 7 wide mouth jars in each canner. Just try to space them out to where try not to let them touch each other so they get good circulation. Going to get the lid on. So anyway, it is on there good, and I will turn that on high and let that start venting. Now I'll get this one loaded. This will also hold 7 quarts. Since we're getting all these in the jars at the same time, it will be interesting to see which one vents first. I get the lid on that one and turn that up to high. We'll be back. All right, so the back one is venting first. So I'm gonna start the timer for 10 minutes. And although this is a bigger BTU, that burner in the back, I'm gonna let it vent for 10 minutes and then I'll come back and put the weight on. All right, so this has been 10 minutes. So I'm going to take the weight, put it on the top, and it will start to build pressure. When this gets up to 10 pounds for my altitude, I will start the timer for 90 minutes, which is for quart jars. Pint jars is 75 minutes. All right, it has reached 10 pounds, which is for my altitude. Make sure you check yours. Now I will turn down my stove about halfway, and I like to keep my gauge between 10 and 11, closer to 11. So if it fluctuates a little bit, it doesn't get below 10, because if it does, you have to start your time from the beginning. So just keep an eye on this, and I'm going to start my timer for 90 minutes. Also, always know what time it is when you start your time for your canning, because if your power goes out, at least you'll know what time. Now I have a gas stove. If you have an electric stove, that's a different issue. So I wrote down the time, and I'll just keep turning this down till it stays about where it's at right now. And the other one has finally started venting. Hasn't gotten through its 10 minutes yet, so we will come back, and that one is venting, but it has not been 10 minutes yet. So I will come back when we're completely through. I'm not going to go through that one just like the other one. So we'll be back when the 90 minutes is finished. So you remember when I said to write down the times that you start your timer when you can? This is why. So I had my timer set on my phone to let me know when the first canner is finished, and I wrote down when the second one will be finished. So I got a gas stove so I could keep going and I didn't have an issue. So as soon as this is ready, I will turn this one off and let it go all the way down to 0. At that point, I will take the weight off. Then I can open the canner. But until then, you leave it alone. This one is about 20 minutes after this one. So I'll do that. And when I have some light, I will come back and show you my jars. All right, it is time for me to turn the first one off. So that one is done. Like I said, I will walk away. When the power comes back on later, I will show you all of our jars that we processed of the chicken. I'll be back. Whew, that was a long afternoon of canning. The power was out for 3.5 hours, and I'm really glad that I have a propane stove, and I wrote the times down of when my 90 minutes started because I could look on my phone and stop that when it was at 90 minutes, so I didn't get all messed up. And I also had 3 jars still. I got a can. I got 2 quart jars and a pint jar of the chicken breast chunks. Those will go for 90 minutes. Even though the pint is 75, you have to put it on the highest number when you mix the 2 sizes. So make sure that you take the rings off after about 24 hours. Wash these in warm soapy water. Label the tops with the date so you know when you canned these. And you're pretty much good to go. Make sure that you like, subscribe, and click that little bell. Thank you so much for watching Down on the Homestead, and make sure you get your house in order. Have a great one.